Is there a feeling more incredible than picking up something you remember loving in your youth and it still being good? I mean, yes, quite a few I can think of off the top of my head, but I try to keep this show PG-13.
Sacrilegious.
In the last few years, I've been putting a lot of effort into revisiting stuff from my childhood and teenage days, trying to rediscover things self-importance and hormones caused me to miss out on, and also separate the wheat from the chaff in entertainment I would have doubled down on being the best of the best in stubborn youthful ignorance. The 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie is still incredible, by the way. Tiny Toon Adventures, not so much. In the same vein, I doubt you'd find much joy in playing Dudes with Attitude, which I spent an inordinate amount of time with as a tenor, but today's subject? I'm Eric J. Chucky, and welcome to Violent Profiles, where we discuss obscure video games and the rosters that define them. If you want to go ahead and get the nice try Diddy comments out of your system now, it would help the algorithm. While you're down there, hit like and subscribe. You know, most of my viewers aren't subscribers. You'd be able to see way more of my content and be a lot cooler if you did.
Alright.
Speaking of YouTube statistics, if you're part of my primary demographic, I don't need to tell you who British game developer Rare is. Their breakout Super Nintendo hit 1994's Donkey Kong Country was transformative. I was one of those kids who got the VHS promo tape in the mail, and I was beyond hype. So of course when we went to 3D, someone who dropped dozens of hours into the SNES Mario Kart like me was really psyched for Diddy Kong Racing.
Picture this, Sicily.
1997. Starting life as 3 different games in a trench coat and eventually becoming a stopgap to buy time and make some holiday season cash before the delayed Banjo-Kazooie could hit store shelves in June of 1998, Diddy Kong Racing was an upgrade over the previous year's Mario Kart 64 by not only having tiny cars, but tiny planes and tiny hovercrafts. It had a story mode and a hub world as well, and it had 3 different types of power-ups in color-coded balloons that upgraded if you picked up multiples of the same color type in a row. Diddy Kong Racing is still smooth, fun, and exciting in 2025, but we're not here to talk about Rare's storied and complex history, or even the mechanics of this snazzy little title. We're here to talk about characters. We'll start with the main antagonist, Whiz Pig. This porcine warlock hails from Future Fun World, a high-tech amusement park of his own creation, and makes it his mission to travel to other planets and cause problems on purpose. He's developed a penchant for racing, so a lot of his goals follow the curves of the track at top speed. Case in point, Whiz Pig landed on the game's island setting and kicked out their resident genie before taking over the raceways and hypnotizing 4 residents into becoming guardians of his 4-part amulet so he could seal himself away to avoid would-be heroes. The only guy who came close to beating him in a race and thus ousting him from power mysteriously disappeared, so the island is in pretty rough shape when our titular character finally arrives. As is common with racing games, there's no character-specific endings. Beat Whiz Pig and he jettisons off into space, landing on a boring, barren planet where I guess he still is to this day. In the DS remake that dropped 10 years later, Whiz Pig became a playable character with max top speed, but terrible acceleration and handling. Most of the racing stats were actually tweaked in the DS release, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the minute differences there unless that's the only place you could play those characters. Like me and my Nintendo-pilled youth, we'll stick with the N64. I'm torn between pointing out Whiz Pig as a terrible name and just enjoying it for being exactly the name you'd expect of a pseudo-whimsical wizard pig character. Maybe I'd jive with it more if he didn't look like that. You'd be forgiven for thinking Diddy Kong is the only main character of this game. His name is in the title, his face is front and center on the cover, he's the only character with an established franchise, but he's actually petitioned for help by Timber the Tiger, Timber's island's perhaps unlikely namesake. His parents own the island, and presumably they did before young Timber was born, so is he named after the island? Did they rename the island after they had him? Is the island in fact a recent acquisition? Was the island gifted to him and now it's his responsibility? I must know. Timber's family is visiting the Kongs when Whiz Pig takes over, and since Diddy and Timber go way back, he agrees to lend his pal a hand in getting everything cleaned up before Timber's parents return. Both of them have a lot of 90s cartoon youth energy reminiscent of Max Goof in the Goof Troop TV show. Both are middleweight carts with average top speed, but Diddy handles a bit better and Timber has slightly superior acceleration. Of course, we know that Diddy went on to have a lucrative career in the greater Nintendo shared universe, including a spot in future Mario Kart entries, but this would be neither the first nor last spotlight poor Timber had stolen from him. Intended to be a character way back in the first Killer Instinct, Timber was supposed to be the star of the N64 game Dinosaur Planet, which eventually became Star Fox Adventures. Some of the characters got postscripts in the form of tongue-in-cheek updates on Rare's social media, Timber included. He was apparently last seen in 2011 having grown a beard and beginning a new career in hip-hop. A heavier character with the mediocre acceleration and handling but higher top speed you'd expect from the weight class, perhaps our most famous non-Kong guest racer is Banjo. Making a Kazooie-less appearance some months before the release of his game. The races apparently take place canonically before the two met, but Diddy is still familiar enough with Banjo to give him a call for assistance when he rides in to save Timber's Island, Timber's Island. This is the part of the video where I feel compelled to make an unpopular confession. I have never been a fan of the Banjo-Kazooie games. I like the characters just fine, they're in my main rotation in Smash, but I'm not the biggest fan of collectathon platformers in the first place, and the mixture of garish N64 visuals, obnoxious sound effects, and, in my opinion, mediocre gameplay have kept me away from the title despite quite a few efforts to learn how to enjoy it. I say this as a way to explain why I didn't know until recently that Tip Top the Turtle is a side character in some of the Banjo-Kazooie games, where you help him with his family. In this continuity, he's a resident of Timbers Island, a cautious and nervous sort who doesn't usually enjoy the adrenaline-crashing, high-octane sport of racing, but is willing to do what has to be done to free his friends from Whiz Pig's tyranny. Tip Top's handling and acceleration are near the peak, but his top speed isn't so great. Sort of like Koopa Troopa from Mario Kart, which is fitting since they're both turtles. Wait a minute, our next racer has similar stats and color palette reminiscent of Toad. The main characters are a heroic guy dressed in red and a slightly more craven buddy who drives around in a green cart. Both of them wear ball caps, and the heavies are a reptilian antagonist and a mammal from an adjacent franchise. Is this roster really all that original? Let's move on to Pipsy, the only female member of the roster, who is an excitable mouse with a high-pitched voice and a native to Timbers Island. Adapted down from Astro Mouse, another hero from a cancelled game project, Pipsy went through a few color palettes and was briefly a marsupial named Roo before settling on her sailor outfit and bow. I remember using her to beat the time trials back in the day, taking advantage of her incredible handling and acceleration to make up for the abysmal top speed. The character unlocked for my efforts was TT, which seems to be short for TikTok.
Feeling like Diddy.
He's around the lobbies in the game with special challenge races and statistics, but the manual describes him as not being capable enough to help the team out in an actual race against Whiz Pig, despite being disgusted with the way he's locked off the island's many tracks. I do not understand this, as he has exceptional acceleration and top speed, with only mediocre turning as a middleweight driver, making him one of the best racers in the game for my money. TT hasn't done much of note since, although Rare apparently used him as a placeholder model during the Sea of Thieves development days. More games should let you play as a giant, barely anthropomorphized clock. The other unlockable racer was another one of my favorites, Drumstick. While certainly a macabre name for a rooster, he fits my Bowser-style weight-to-speed preference, and he's a chicken. I love chickens. Drumstick was the best racer on the island, but when he stepped to Whiz Pig, the sinister swine turned him into a frog. That is, in fact, how you unlock him. After assembling the Whiz Pig amulet and winning all the trophy races, a frog with a rooster's comb will appear. Run over him in typical cheeky Rare humor fashion, and Drumstick is freed from the spell, becoming yours to control. If I picked up the game for the first time today, I might gravitate more towards Bumper the Badger. While his attributes are more middle of the road than my usual cup of tea, he's a cool little badger guy. Look at him, he's got little goggles. Bumper lives for the thrills, and is especially excited to help bring justice to Timbers Island when he finds out speed is part of the solution. Unfortunately, sometime after Diddy Kong Racing, Bumper fell afoul of the authorities and spent quite a long time incarcerated. As of 2021, Bumper was allowed out on parole, exhibiting performative remorse for his actions. This is canon, by the way. The only characters from Diddy Kong Racing Rare doesn't currently own are Diddy, obviously, and Crunch the Kremling. Since Kremlings are a Donkey Kong staple, Nintendo still owns the rights to. Never mind that Crunch was originally designed as a crocodile before the game became Diddyfied, and there's really not much applicable difference between Crocs and Kremlings. Intellectual property rights are kind of a mess. Crunch has a heavy cart with great top speed and crap acceleration and turning. He snuck off after Diddy to make sure he wasn't plotting any anti-Kremling affairs. When he discovered Whiz Pig's plans, he agreed to help quash them so the wicked piggy doesn't overshadow the greatness of King K. Rool. King K. Rool. The final all-rounder and most infamous celebrity cameo making his actual debut in this game, Conker the Squirrel is having a much better day here than in his most famous outing, Conker's Bad Fur Day. Much like Banjo and a bit of hype building for the eventual release, Conker is a friend Diddy made on his travels who is summoned via letter to help save Timbers Island. He's described as a devil-may-care hero, quite distant from the mature Bad Fur Day outing where he's a lecherous lush in a very adult-themed world. That was a game I played a little bit of, but never had the opportunity to get into. It rides that line between too crass to be funny and just crass enough to be hilarious, especially for what would have been a 16-year-old me at the time of its release. Last but not least, in terms of size and personality, is Taj the Elephant Genie. I really liked Taj as a kid. With his thick Indian accent and helpful demeanor, he reminded me of Robin Williams' Genie from Aladdin, and had I known he was also playable via Unlock in the DS remake, I probably would have bought it just for the novelty. He has the same stats as Whiz Pig, but he's a delightful and inspiring ally to Diddy and his friends in retaking Timbers Island instead of being a selfish wiener. They also changed his accent in the DS version, which... For no reason, here's a poo. It was honestly probably for the best. We might as well mention the 4 boss characters who aren't Whiz Pig. Bluey the Walrus, Bubbler the Octopus, Smokey the Dragon, and Tricky the Triceratops don't have much to do in this game but be raced against, broken free of Whiz Pig's spell, and celebrate in the ending. But the Tricky here is supposed to be the same Tricky in Star Fox Adventures. I know tidbits like that don't amount to much and probably only appeal to viewers of a certain persuasion. But I like the cameo crossovers he and many of the other cast members made. It's not often we get this kind of trivia in the video game world. I was also halfway through editing this video when I realized Banjo and Conker were replaced in the DS remake by Tiny Kong and Dixie Kong respectively. I assume this is because of Microsoft's acquisition of Rare. Even though Rare did develop the DS version, those mascot characters were now owned by a competing platform, and we're a long way off from the reconciliation of the modern Smash roster. The girls don't have any extra backstory, Diddy just brought them along to help, so here they are. A solid title with unique mechanics and fun characters. I wouldn't mind seeing something of a sequel. Although, obviously, Diddy couldn't join the party with Rare now being owned by Microsoft. They could do a Banjo-Kazooie racing game, though. Wait, never mind. Nope, that's a terrible idea. In the time since I first put this episode together, Nintendo announced the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World, and I couldn't help but be reminded of Diddy Kong Racing with the karts, flying vehicles, and hovercraft modes. So even though we don't get the amazing cast of original Rare characters, a lot of the dynamic racing action is with us once again. Next time on Violent Profiles, it's time to revisit another topic from the Patreon-exclusive Season 0 episodes, except this time I have the technology to cover everything. If you don't want to wait an eternity to see what I'm talking about, consider championing my cause on Patreon at the $5 tier. Your name will join the illustrious high scores currently on screen, and you'll get episodes of Violent Profiles a month early, as well as my deepest gratitude. Until next time, light out.